Good morning. Let's go over some redox problems. Okay, number one, determine what is oxidized and what is reduced. The oxidizing agent and the reducing agent are no longer on the AP test, so we won't be doing that. Strontium and oxygen are both in their standard state, so they have an oxidation number of 0. Over here in this compound, oxygen's -2. That makes strontium +2. So strontium, it goes from 0 to +2. That means it's losing 2 electrons. Oxygen, this is O2, goes to -2. It gains 2 electrons. So strontium, since it loses 2 electrons, -2 electrons, remember that we have 2 possible options for our little abbreviations here. Oil rig, oxidation is losing, reduction is gaining. That's the one I'm going to use. The other one is Leo, says GER, which is losing electrons, oxidation, gain electrons, reduction, both work. Okay, so since we said this one is losing electrons, that's going to be oxidation. So strontium is oxidized. And oxygen, since it gains 2 electrons, +2 electrons, to become negatively 2 charged, so that's kind of confusing. When it gains electrons, the charge becomes more negative because the electrons are negative. So oxygen, I'm going to write it out so it doesn't look like 0. Oxygen is reduced. Okay, it gains electrons. Reduction is gain. There we go. Okay, lithium and strontium, both in their standard state. Both start at 0. Over here, lithium's group 1, +1, sulfur, -2. This goes from 0 to -2, so sulfur gains electrons. That makes it reduction. And the lithium, since it goes from 0 to +1, that means that it lost electrons, so that is oxidation. It's oxidized. Okay, cesium, bromine, because this is the diatomic version over here, it's bromide, -1. Cesium's +1. So cesium goes from 0 to +1. It lost, it's oxidized. That's what we should write if I'm not being lazy, but that's okay. 0 to -1 means it gained electrons, and that means that bromine is reduced. Okay, I'm going to go back to abbreviated so we save some time. Okay, standard states, both 0. That means this is +2, -3. Make sure those charges balance. 3 times 2 is -6. 2 times 3 is going to be +6, so they do balance. Okay, magnesium is going, whoops, I drew the arrow to the wrong part. I'm so sorry. It goes right there. Okay, 0 +2, it lost. That means it's oxidized. And nitrogen has gained. Nitrogen is going over there. That means that it is reduced. Iron, standard state. Oxygen, standard state. Over here, iron oxide. There are 3 oxygens, each -2. Since iron is a transition metal, we cannot be sure what its charge is until we use the oxidation number of the oxygen to figure that out. So we have -2 times 3 is -6. That means this has to be +6. There is a 2 there, so we have 2 of them, so each one is +3. So iron is going from 0 to +3. That means it has lost electrons. That means it is oxidized, and the oxygen is reduced. Okay, so which one is doing the oxidizing? Oxygen is oxidizing the iron, and that makes it the oxidizing agent. So therefore, that oxidizing agent is reduced. But again, that's not on the AP test, so don't worry about it too much. Just worry about these. Okay, chlorine, 0. Now we have some charges. Sodium is +1, bromide is -1. And over here, +1, -1. This is a single displacement reaction because bromine is getting kicked out. So the chlorine becomes chloride, Cl. goes from 0 to -1. That means it gained. So that means it's reduced. And what else is changing? The sodium stays +1. So the chlorine, the bromine, Br, goes from -1 to 0. So it has lost an electron, and that is oxidation. It's oxidized. Okay, silicon by itself, 0. F2 by itself, 0. Over here we have -1 for the fluorines. That means +4 for the silicon. This has lost 4 electrons. Silicon is oxidized. Fluorine is reduced. Another way of looking at the reduction is when it's reduced, the charge becomes more negative. So it can go from +5 to +4, or from 0 to -1, like we are here, because when you add those negative electrons, it makes the charge smaller. It's reducing the charge. Okay, calcium, 0, oxygen, 0, +2, -2. My kitty cat wants out. Okay, calcium is losing. That makes it oxidized. And the oxygen is gaining, and that makes it, oxygen is reduced. Magnesium, 0, hydrogen, +1, chlorine, -1, +2, -1, 0. So what is changing here? Not the chlorine, we're not worrying about chlorine. So the magnesium is going from 0 to +2. It lost 2 electrons. So it's oxidized, and the hydrogen is going from +1 down to 0, so it is reduced. And sodium is 0, +1, -2, over here +1, -2, and +1, and 0. So what is changing? The sodium is changing. The Na goes from 0 to +1. It lost electrons, so it is oxidized. The hydrogen, well, there's quite a few hydrogens in here. Two of them are becoming +1 to 0. They are being reduced. Hydrogen is reduced. And the oxygen does nothing. There is no transfer of electrons in the oxygen, so it's not part of the redox reaction. Okay, I'm going to finish the second part in the next video. Take care.